Hello and welcome back to CBR MTG. My name is Angus Mackay and I'm joined here once again by Philip Nicholson.
Hi.
And today we are restarting. We put up our top 8 on YouTube. We wanted to get that out as quickly as possible, but now we've got a little bit of extra time and we want to, devote the time to all 7 rounds that we had at CANCON 2019, the National Highlander Championships. And you see here in round 1 we have Tom Clift versus Graham King. Tom Clift is playing the Paul Mitchell Control, aka Kess, and Graham's playing Teferi's Greed, which is a brew of his own invention, 4-color control, Esper Red or Grixis White, whichever one you prefer. Nono Green, I think, is the preferred term, but that's a story for another time. Well, Philip, why don't you sort of go through Cat's Pile for those of you who don't know, because you may have known by now, but if this is your very first video, you may not know about Cat's Pile. So, Phil, why don't you run us through the deck and what it does?
Sure. So Caspile is just a control deck in the Grixis colors, looking to kind of control the game with counterspells and cheap, efficient removal and similar interaction, and then try and take over the late game with one of a couple of different threats, kind of the most notable of which is the deck's titular Kess Dissident Mage.
Mm. Yeah, and Kess being a very powerful commander card, and a commander herself if you truly want to make your friends hate you. But very competitive card, gives all your spells essentially flashback in your turn. One a turn you get to choose. But when your deck is full of instants and sorceries, Kess does a whole lot of work. On Graham's side, and it seems to be doing the control thing. They're just kind of trading. They're trading hand disruption effects at the moment, just playing it pretty easy. We see Tom Clift playing out his first of such hand disruption with a Thoughtseize to see Graham's hand of Cavern of Souls, Restoration Angel, Unexpectedly Absent, Counterspell, and what was this one, Philip?
The evasive action?
Yeah, evasive action. It's a domain counterspell, which counters your opponent's spell unless they pay X, where X is the number of basic land types they have. So really sort of a pull into those 4 colors, as you can see, was definitely good enough to be included in Graham's pile. Graham being a very good brewer of the format and likes to sort of bring something new to the table each time, and Teferi's Greed is no exception.
Yeah, I mean, you see evasive action occasionally here and there in the 3-color control decks too, just as a bit of a worse mana leak, I guess. Because kind of in the early game where you only have 2 land types, usually your opponent doesn't have that much spare mana on their spells, and then in the late game, you have all your land types, so it is a mana leak. And then obviously when you're in a deck that has more colors than just the 3, it ends up being better than mana leak pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily a build around, but it's a nice include to have, especially when you see at this point Graham does have all 4 of his land types with the Badlands and the Tundra itself doing most of the work. But yeah, he did attempt to resolve that Restoration Angel, which did resolve that Meta Terminate pretty quickly. Like Kess hits you on every angle, which is probably why it's such a good deck in the format. But you don't have to worry about having your spells resolve like you would in, say, Miracles in Legacy, where all you got to do is get your spells to resolve, and then it's kind of okay. I mean, you might hit a Terminus or something along the lines, but the Paul Mitchell Control or Kess Pile is definitely can let things resolve just because they want to use their Terminate as opposed to their Counterspell.
Yeah, the deck definitely has a lot of removal for creatures and artifacts, and sometimes even planeswalkers, in addition to just the hard counterspells, which definitely gives it a pretty kind of decent to good matchup against most of the field. And then obviously they can tune exactly what they need post sideboarding game 2 to make pretty much any matchup pretty good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing Tom Cliff play out his dig through time, which is huge game. Huge game for Tom, considering this is the control matchup, and resolving a dig through time is probably one of the best things you can do, being such a powerful pointed card at this point. We did see him opt to take the Kess and the Hymn to Torak, if I'm not mistaken, and then draw the Tasigur off the top. Tasigur's a little bit hard to cast at the moment. He could actually just hard cast it, but he probably wants to wait until his. This might be the perfect opportunity, actually. I was going to say wait until he has a little bit of hand disruption, but just on time. Here comes the Inquisition of Kozilek, and probably the follow-up of the Mana Leak if anything goes wrong, but he doesn't even have to worry about that because Graham's hand is but a Lonely Island and a Teferi.
Well, it is a little bit something to worry about because obviously if he just taps out for Tasigur, Teferi will really ruin his day with a simple tick down. He doesn't actually have a Dreadbore or anything in hand to deal with an answered Teferi, so he just opts to pass the turn back, leave his Mana Leak open, and not kind of just lose a game to randomly letting Teferi resolve.
Yeah. It's a shame about his mana situation at the moment because he could have opted to Hymn to Torak immediately and just get rid of his last two cards, but he has opted to go for the Inquisition, which means that he wasn't able to do the Hymn to Torak line until now. But yeah, Tom Clift very much ahead of the game at the moment with a resolved Trina Nemesis and his control opponent top decking, which is very bad when you're playing control.
Yeah, especially in the mirror, your opponent still has 4 or 5 cards in hand and a resolved threat that's difficult to deal with, like True Neighbors. It's just never something that you want to see.
And he does have that Mana Leak. The Mana Leak is not going to do a whole lot, so I'd probably be a little bit inclined to at least attempt to resolve Kess. And then, now he's got the Force of Will. Yeah, never mind.
I just don't think he doesn't really have a need to resolve one of his threats. I think he was going to go for anything. It'd probably be Tasigur just because he can cast it for 2.
For sure.
But there's just no real need to tap out for anything here when he's got hard cast Force of Will open if he needs it. There's only a couple of spells that can really deal with True Name or race it.
Yeah.
So there's no need to commit anything else to the board. Just kind of ride the True Name to victory.
True Name being one of the most played of the one-pointed cards, which is very interesting because once it resolves, as you said, it's very hard to get rid of. But the format has kind of moved around it because edict effects are sort of at an all-time high. Even in Kess Pile, there are playing a couple of edict effects in the format just to give respect to True Name Nemesis. But it is something that you have to pay attention to because spot removal just doesn't get it.
Yeah, I mean, unless your spot removal is Council Judgment, you're just going to have a really rough time actually getting rid of it, given you are unable to target it at all. Means that you pretty much need a Wrath or an Edict effect when your opponent doesn't have any other creatures.
Yeah, not completely unlikely for Graham to find some sort of Wrath or Edict effect. He is playing white, which does give him the opportunity to play Council's Judgment, which he is playing in his list, which is definitely one of the best removal spells for it. We see Graham maybe getting a fresh look at the top 7 cards of his library with this dig through time, but Tom's definitely considering whether or not he wants to let it resolve.
There's certainly answers in Graham's deck that could deal with the True Name Nemesis. It's just a question of whether he can find the right sequence of answers in a short enough space of time
without getting accounted.
That he actually gets one through and deals with the True Name Nemesis before he dies.
And here comes an Esper Charm off the top for Graham. It's probably not going to be enough. He does get a second chance with his Jace to maybe look for a counterspell. A cantrip. Is there anything? I don't think there's anything in there.
He has a dig through time. He doesn't have a huge amount to fuel it on the second go around. I think he's just casting the Esper Charm as divination here.
Yeah, quite possible. I mean, you may as well. It's up to Tom whether or not it resolves, but he might be so inclined to just let it.
Well, Graham does another card in hand. He doesn't really have the mana to leverage kind of 2 ways to deal with True Name at the same time.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I think wait.
Yeah, not countering the Esper Charm seems pretty good though.
And we'll see what Graham decides to do. He is opting to tick down Jace, targeting one of his cards. Unfortunately, off the top of his library, he only found a Windswept Heath and a Spell Snare, so he's not going to be able to get rid of that True Name with the current cards he has in hand. So, I mean, maybe we're just at the point where we're flashing back Esper Charm. It looks like we're just going for the Inquisition.
Yeah.
All right, well, we can't crack our fetches anymore, but we can go to one. Unfortunately, as soon as Graham saw the cards in Tom's hand, he knew that it was time to pack it up. Unfortunately,
Yeah, there were definitely enough answers there that there just wasn't a sequence of draws that would actually get Graham out of that.
yeah. Going into sideboards now. On Tom's side, we have Anger of the Gods, Blood Moon, Counter Squall, Duress, Engineered Explosives, Fluster Storm, Hour of Devastation, Hydroblast, Kalidas, Trader of Get, Magus of the Moon, Nihil Spellbomb, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Submerge, and Young Pyromancer. And on Graham's side, we have Orok Champion, Bitter Ordeal, Direfleet Daredevil, Disenchant, Duress, Fairy Macabre, Fluster Storm, Hydroblast, Kembal, Console of Allocation, Nihil Spellbomb, Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Subterranean Tremors, Toxic Deluge, and Wear Tear. Phil, what do you think Graham might be considering bringing in this matchup?
So I think that obviously the blasts are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Both red and blue blasts definitely have quite a few targets against all of the things in Kess. Combal Console Allocation is also pretty good. It's a creature that if they don't answer it immediately, will drain them for a pretty hefty amount of life, and really hurts if you're kind of trying to cantrip into specific answers and stuff like that.
I do like the spicy Subterranean Tremors that he has in hand, that he has in his sideboard.
I don't know that this is the matchup for another Wrath.
Yeah.
It's certainly a very interesting card, dealing damage to creatures without flying and potentially destroying artifacts in the process. It's probably more of an anti-shops piece that he's chosen.
Yeah. That doesn't kill Trino Nemesis, does it?
No, because it's just damage. I think that Toxic Deluge would be a pretty defensible card to board in.
For sure.
Because it does deal with that, and the majority, with the kind of the exception really of Tasigur, most of the creatures that Kess plays are relatively small. Okay. And so the life cost of Deluge isn't very high.
It looks like Graham's definitely considering the Direfleet Daredevil, which
that card's great.
But as we mentioned before, with Kess playing such a high quantity of removal spells and stuff, it bodes very well to play a Direfleet.
Yeah, I mean, it gets you a spell from their graveyard. They probably have to answer it at some point. And given the deck is playing, Snapcaster, playing Kess, sometimes playing Jace Prodigy, plays a bunch of Devil spells, getting rid of one of their best cards and not letting them ever flash it back, and you get to flash it back. It's a pretty big big deal.
We saw in the top 8 footage where Jane Holland was playing the Direfleet Daredevil, and he ended up flashing back a board wipe just to exile it.
Yeah.
So it has that potential, where you don't have to cast it. It's just nice to be able to exile a card from your opponent's library, graveyard. So that's very interesting. So it looks like Tom's opting to side out his Force of Will, which I really like in these matchups. Siding in the Magus and the Blood Moon, something that we have seen Kess Pile do quite a lot lately is siding in the Blood Moon effects, because Kess is one of the best sort of decks in the format, and they kind of at one point were folding to Blood Moon just a teensy little bit. They couldn't really, they were maxing out on their non-basic lands, and then at one point, the first time that I've seen it was Meet Me Arthur, who was the winner of the GP Melbourne event that we had recently, the side event, and she was playing Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon in the side, and I was very surprised because I hadn't seen Kess Pile play Blood Moon in the sideboard before, but it seems like it's basic practice at this point.
Yeah, I think they've just kind of cut back on a lot of the kind of greedier spells. Sort of they're only really playing the absolute very best cards that kind of cost 2 of the same color. They're just opting into playing just the best cards of each color without kind of stretching the mana base as thin. Obviously, Blood Moon does still have text against the deck, which is why they're not opting to play it main or anything like that. But against any of the 4 or 5 color opponents, or against a land strategy, having access to a card like Blood Moon, especially when you're playing it, and it's pretty easy to fetch around.
Yeah,
it's quite nice.
This is interesting because this is the event directly after the points update, which allowed back to basics to be 0 points. Down from 1 after a hearty discussion from the whole community about trying to ban Blood Moon because it was just one spell win the game sort of thing. But Back to Basics sort of got the hit for the Blood Moon conversation, but eventually it got depointed again because there was just so many 4 and 5 color greed piles going around. And Graham's chosen not to care about those back to basics that could possibly be looming in the room, and has just decided to play his 4 color deck because why the hell not?
Yeah, I mean, it's got answers to cards like Back to Basics and Blood Moon, and it kind of, regardless of what strategy you pick, sometimes you're going to run into a card or a matchup that you can't beat.
Mhm.
And I guess at least with a deck like this, you know what that is going in.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I do think it's interesting that Tom, I don't think, opted to board in his Hour of Devastation.
Okay.
Which its kind of main advantage as a Wrath is that it deals with Planeswalkers, which Graham's deck has a pretty hefty number of.
Yeah, playing Dak Fade and Jace the Mind Sculptor, Liliana Last Hope, Nihiri the Harbinger, and Teferi Hero of Dominaria. So that is a hefty amount. Five comparative to his 3. I mean, Graham's also playing Nicol Bolas, which is, I guess, not a huge point when you're talking about Hour of Devastation because it deals 5 damage to each non-Bolas Planeswalker.
It does deal 5 damage to each non-Bolas Planeswalker, but it doesn't have any kind of similar protection for Nicol Bolas creatures. So it still kills Nicol Bolas the Ravager before he flips over.
Yeah. One of the good things I suppose that Wizards did with card design was did not let Nicol Bolas flip at instant speed, because that would probably be pretty broken.
It costs like 1 million mana to flip that card.
But it's not impossible. We're playing a control deck.
Yeah.
He's playing Subterranean Terrors. You saw it in his sideboard. He's thinking about casting it for 9.
Sure, but if you let your control opponent get to 9 mana to flip their Nicol Bolas, you deserve to lose the game.
That's reasonable. And speaking of deserving to lose the game, Paul Graham has had a really, really bad set of mulligans while we were talking, and he went no lands, no lands, no lands, and his mulligan to 4 was 4 lands, and he's going to keep it because you don't want to go down to 3, and this hand kind of worked out okay. He's going to cast this Thoughtseize that he found off the top, and not exactly a great plan, is it?
No, I mean, when you've already mulliganed to a lower kind of card number than your opponent, hand disruption that trades 1 for 1 isn't exactly where you want to be. You kind of need to hit some pretty insane cards for it to really be worth it, particularly since you're kind of leveraging your mana to do so, and often stumbling on your land drops while your opponent is kind of usually a lot more free to just do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Although Tom doesn't have too much gas in his hand, he's really only sitting on a Ponder, and he's now drawn a Thoughtseize that he's might be about to cast and realize Graham doesn't have anything to take, which is pretty much the best case scenario for Graham here.
I think it's worth the risk. I mean, Graham's very happy with this Thoughtseize because it means Tom went down to parity. He did the thing that Graham had to do to sort of keep himself alive against the Shrine Nemesis, but now he's sitting on 2 lands, and Tom Cliff has paid 2 life to see that information, and he might not be very happy about that.
No, I mean, if I was Tom, I'd be completely happy with the situation. You're still, even Thoughtseizing nothing, it's still kind of like your opponent's mulligan to 5, which is still pretty bad. It's not quite as disastrous as the mulligan to 4, but it's still pretty bad. And you can see your opponent's only working with the top of their library while you've still got a ponder into some stuff, and you've just got way more land drops than them. So at some point, Graham's either going to run out of things to do, or he's going to run out of lands to play.
Yeah.
Whereas that point is going to take a lot longer for Tom to reach, if he reaches it at all.
I mean, the top of his library for this ponder has revealed a Blood Moon and a counterspell and another card, and he's opting to keep it the way it is.
I believe the last card was Wandering Fumarole.
Okay, cool. So no shortage of lands. He did opt to take the counterspell. Not that it means too much, but he might be inclined, while Graham doesn't want to see the top 3 cards of his library being lands, so he's going to give it a good flash to his opponent and then shuffle his library. Quite a comedy of circumstance at this point, because Tom kind of only has the ponder to go for to kind of gain some advantage over Graham, but they're both kind of just a handful of lands on both sides. But Fortunately, Tom is playing the best version of those, which is he's got a Blood Moon on top of his deck, and he might just want to slam it down now.
I thought you were saying that he has better basic lands. I don't know if I could really agree with that. I think that the nice unglued basics from Graham are definitely a touch better than the old GP promo. But
Yeah, it's pretty funny. The Field of Ruin might not be something that he wants to cast, considering he's considering casting that Blood Moon at some point. Here we go. Human for the Cavern of Souls. At this point, we are really living in the age of technology right now. But yeah, the Field of Ruin might not be completely worth it to play. Oh, okay, very good. Yeah, the Field of Ruin might not be very exciting to play, but he may just punch it off because he thinks it is not a completely unlikely possibility that Graham won't have very many basic lands to fetch out. And then also it opens him up to fetch out a basic swamp so that he can deploy that Blood Moon without it too much worry.
Yeah, I mean, there's also just the fact that if you haven't played the Blood Moon yet, the Cavern of Souls is a huge pain. There's also just there's also the fact that Graham already has a basic plains in play and an untapped Flooded Strand. So if he wants to go find an island as well in response to a Blood Moon, he can do that. Which means that kind of the impact of Blood Moon here isn't really that high. And I believe as things stand at the moment, it would cut Tom off black.
Yeah.
So it's just really not that worthwhile for him to fire off a Blood Moon at this exact moment in time.
Although he didn't seem too happy with it, Graham taking his last non-land card from his hand, and now we're back to where we were before, except Graham's kind of in the lead. He's got the Snapcaster Mage, he's got that perfect information, and he's got a couple of lands in his hand to back it up, so really he's in kind of an okay spot.
Well, I mean, eventually Wandering Fumarole can just block Snapcaster Mage. But,
that's true.
You know,
we do have the Creeping Tarpet as well. I suppose it's not that great of a block, but
it can
we can start race. Yeah.
Yeah, but until then, until Tom gets a bit more mana under his belt to play with those creature lands, Goblin Piker is going to put some work in.
Yeah, he also blocks very well, right? The Wandering Fumarole, because you don't have to activate his ability every time. You can hold it back and just have it as a 1/4, and 1/4s pair up pretty well against opponent's Snapcaster Mages.
Yeah, 1/4s versus 2/1s. It's not really a situation you want to be the 2/1 in.
Exactly right.
Tom was thinking about blowing up his Field of Ruin, but elects to keep it, I guess.
He just doesn't want to hit that another land off the top of his library.
Well, I mean, I think it's just also that in this situation, he doesn't have any counterspells, and Graham doesn't have anything. So destroying a Cavern of Souls right now just isn't that high value.
Yeah, you could possibly wait, try and snipe a flipped Searchers counter if it ever gets to that point.
Also something like Celestial Colonnade. It just seems a lot more impactful than hitting a Cavern of Souls when you don't actually have any counterspells left.
And you've got like a million removal being a Kess pile deck, you know.
Yeah, this was a pretty good draw off the top.
That's a good top deck. All right, so as we said before, the person who gets the dig through time first is usually pretty favored, and this is going to be no exception. Graham's been fighting very, very well on that multi-4, but this dig through time might be digging the hole that Graham will have to sit in, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the best 2 of 7 cards is usually going to get you something pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So
in a deck that's just like mono answers, like your deck is either answers or threats. You know, it's kind of like 2 really bad demonic tutors. You know, because it just depends on whether or not you want to use the Terminate or the Fire and Ice. You know.
Sure. I mean, taking a Vendilion Clique here to be able to more actively race Snapcaster Mage is pretty fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also, he has the he doesn't quite have the mana for Vendilion Clique at the very moment, but he does have 2 cards in hand that are both lands, so could be the thing that he's going to do.
Well, he has 3 untapped, right? And they're just not 2 blue.
Not 2 blue, yeah.
Right.
But he does have the Steam Vents in hand. He's got plenty of options if he wants to cast his Vendilion Clique at his nearest opportunity. We'll see if he goes for the tapped land. Soulful Force seems pretty safe. It does mean he can also activate the Field of Ruin if he so chooses. So he's got the opportunity to end of turn Field of Ruin and then Snapcaster Mage. Vendilion Clique. He's going to opt to do it in the draw step. Something that we mentioned in one of our previous videos was when you should punch off your Vendilion Click, because I think you mentioned that in combo you probably want to do it in your opponent's draw step, but sometimes it's better to just do it at end of turn because your opponent's threats are all the same.
Yeah,
you know?
so this control would be a matchup where you would do it end of turn because your opponent's threats are kind of all the same. As you look at a hand of 5 counterspells, and there's sort of no real point in throwing it off. You look at a hand of 3 planeswalkers, and now you've tapped out, and they can just resolve whichever planeswalker you didn't take.
Yeah.
But in this situation, because Graham is so low on cards, that's just so much less likely to happen. And having that information about what he's drawn and potentially taking away one of kind of the few things he could have that really gets him there, is much better.
And I mean, it didn't quite work out for him, but I don't know if things would have happened any differently if he did wait until end of turn, except for the fact that Graham would have a Diafleet Daredevil on the battlefield, which isn't too exciting in what Tom has in his graveyard.
Well, there's a dig through time, isn't there? It hasn't been exiled for any reason, so there should be a dig through time there.
Yeah, can you you can delve?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then in that case, yeah, Diafleet Daredevil sounds like a great choice for Tom. And he wouldn't have been able to do it if he did it end of turn, because I'm sure Graham would have just played it in his first main phase.
Well, Tom would have been able to mana leak the dig through time.
Okay.
But I mean, that still gives Graham a Diafleet Daredevil for no reason. He just doesn't.
And takes a counterspell out of his hand.
Yeah.
On his own spell. Got him.
That would definitely be a bit of a yikes. Whereas just playing out the Vendilion Clique a little bit earlier than you sometimes might in the control matchup means that Tom doesn't have to deal with that. He gets to take away the Diafleet Daredevil, and now his Fumarole and his Tar Pit are safe from a fatal push.
Yeah, that's absolutely true as well. Being able to take down that fatal push at the small cost of 1 Vendilion Click is probably okay. You still have that sheer volume of card advantage that Tom has in his hand, as opposed to Graham, who's kind of just sitting on 2 cards right now. Both of them still unknown, however, it's just Tom's probably feeling pretty confident right now, especially with this Jace brainstorming every turn, getting him an extra card.
Yeah, Graham I think is sitting on a land and a Colligan's Command, which Colligan's Command is definitely a very good card, but it won't deal with this Jace immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, if he couples it with a Snapcaster attack, it would, but
I'm kind of okay with waiting till Snapcaster Mage dies to play out this Colligan's Command, which seems to be what Graham's thinking of, but it looks like he's just going to punch it off now.
Well, going for the opponent discards a card line is completely fine.
Yeah, for sure.
He's going to run into a mana leak here, but
which is unfortunate.
Yeah, it is a bit unfortunate, because if he kind of waited until Snapcaster cracked in, he'd be able to play that extra land, and he'd be able to pay 3, whereas here he can't do that. Yeah,
look, what can you do, huh? Get run into an opponent's mana leak there. This seems like the perfect time to play mana leak. Mana leak, Spell Pierce, those sorts of cards, evasive action get worse as the game goes on. So whenever you can find protection from a 2-for-1. Sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, but there's also just the fact that he discarded Mana Leak to counter the Colligan's Command, but he was going to discard a card anyway. So he may as well not have Jace lose 2 loyalty out of the deal.
Also, it's like intimidating your opponent as well.
Yeah, definitely. It sends a message to your opponent when you never let any of their spells resolve that you are the player in control of the game, and you are the more powerful wizard.
Yeah, which is what Tom is doing right now, flexing on his opponent with the Spell Snare and Red Elemental Blast in hand. He will be able to say at the end of the game, "I still had all of these," which is exactly what the losing player wants to hear.
Yeah, definitely, particularly in a game where they've mulliganed to 4. It's a really good way to ensure that your opponent will really like you and will want to play more Magic with you in the future.
That's right. It's all about making friends. It's all about the gathering, But yeah, don't do that, everybody. Hot tip, don't do that. I wonder if he's gonna save up the mana for the Wandering Fumarole, or if he's just gonna go in with this Creeping Tar Pit. It looks like has the capability to do both.
Yeah, he's got Infinity Lands, so the answer to that question is both.
Yeah, which means that Snapcaster Mage will no longer be able to attack.
This Vendilion Clique would be able to attack if it wasn't about to get red blasted.
Yeah, look, still at all these, you know. This is an end of turn click, but mostly I guess out of desperation. Not necessarily out of desperation, but just like Graham's on the back foot here. He wants to just sort of play stuff at the end of his opponent's turn, so he can.
I feel like that Kevin may be naming Wizard because that seems like that was a red blast response to the trigger, and that's also the only way that Graham would be able to cast.
I mean, he cast Snapcaster Mage, he casts Jace, and he casts Vendilion Click. They're all three wizards.
Yeah.
So I guess that's interesting. I thought it was going to be on humans, but looking at Graham's creature base at the moment, he does have. Is Dark Confidant a wizard as well?
Yeah, it's a human wizard, and I believe he is playing Kess Dissonant Mage, I think, which is a vampire wizard.
Human wizard.
Human wizard.
And unfortunately, Nicobolus not a wizard. Restoration Angel not a wizard. Tasked not a wizard. So you know there is a lot of wizards in this deck, which does allow this Cavern of Souls to be pretty good. But also your like most influential spells that are creatures, wizards, which is probably where you really want them to resolve. You know, which is where the Cavern of Souls comes in.
Yeah, it is a little bit difficult to cast something like an Esper Charm with a Cavern of Souls.
Yeah. But
I think that Graham is kind of opting to have a little bit more edge in most control matchups and to give up a little bit of, you know, ability to cast spells on time in some other matchups by opting to play the Cavern.
Also, yeah, I mean, I really like Vendilion Click being uncounterable because like it's just no matter what, you get to look at your opponent's hand. If the spell resolves, you get to sort of choose. I mean, when the spell resolves, you get to look at your own hand if you need to, without worrying about your opponent countering your spell or not. So I kind of like it a lot, actually. But yeah, it does make casting Esper Charm super difficult.
Maybe your opponent will just play Urborg for you and make your life easier.
Maybe. We can only hope, you know. But it looks like Tom's might be ready to seal up this game pretty soon. He does have a counter squall, the spell snare I believe from before, and then another Jace. But the important thing is that he has drawing 2 cards a turn, and also has 2 creature lands, and also has Search for his counter, and also has a bunch of counter spells, and also has all the lands in the world. Like this is exactly where Tom Cliff wants to be right now. And exactly where Graham King doesn't want Tom to be right now.
Pretty much the only thing in Graham's favor is that Tom is only on 6 life.
Yeah.
So if Tom kind of taps out awkwardly or just kind of forgets about a Snapcaster attack or something like that, there's potentially a world in which Graham could try and, you know, sneak a couple of burn spells in and close the distance. But, you know, as long as Tom doesn't kind of unnecessarily take risks and rush to end the game when he's this far, you know, ahead on resources, there's probably not really a realistic way for Graham to get back in this game.
Yeah, I think there is a carnal rule in Magic where you take more risks when you're behind, or you take all your risks when you're behind, and you play the safest when you're in front. Tom would be crazy if he thought that now would be the time to like tap out for a fun spell or do something like that. Like he might find himself, you know, he could get burnt out at any point. He does know that Graham's playing a weird pile that he's never seen before that also plays red, so it's not completely out of the realms of possibility that he is playing Tribal Flames.
Yeah.
which is a domain spell.
Even just Lightning Bolt. Now that Tom's kind of fetched himself down to 3, would be a bit rough and kind of a lot harder to play around, as well as it's an instant. Whereas Tribal Flames is unfortunately a sorcery.
Sad. Not when you want to be playing a control deck, that's for sure.
I mean, you can definitely play a decent number of sorceries in a control deck, but I think if you're just looking to remove your opponent's creatures, you probably have better options than Tribal Flames, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I think that there's definitely has to be a real consideration in Tom's mind of ensuring he never opens himself up to just being burnt out of the game when there's just kind of no need for him to lose this game.
Yeah, and it looks like Tom's also kind of hitting all of his sideboard cards as well, which I think he's going to be pretty happy about. He's got the Counter Squall and the Pyroblast in hand, and he has the red Elemental Blast in the graveyard, which is what I used before. But like, I mean, that's definitely what you want to have happen, is to hit all your sideboard cards. But Graham's fought very, very well considering the circumstance.
Yeah, I imagine if that 4-card hand had 3 more cards in it, Graham probably would have been able to close this game out.
What if there were 3 more lands?
I mean, even that would kind of help a bit. It just makes, some of the decisions on things like Ponder a bit easier. Gives him the mana to, resolve his Kolaghan's Command through that mana leak a few times back. So
yeah, that's true. I wonder if there was any consideration to counterspell the Inquisition instead of letting it resolve. It's hard to say, I suppose, but I guess it wouldn't have mattered in the grand scheme of things. But Hydroblast is definitely an interesting choice. It definitely hits a lot of cards in Tom's deck, including his opposing Pyroblasts. But the only time that I would ever bring in a Hydroblast is if I knew my opponent was bringing in Pyroblast. So I guess it works.
Well, it hits that. It also hits the Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon.
Oh, that's true.
Probably suspects we're being boarded in. Hits Kess. It hits Kolaghan's Command. There's certainly
Terminate. Yeah,
a
definitely
pretty hefty number of targets. It can sometimes be a little bit awkward and just not have any cards to hit, but
hits Funeral.
Yeah, that's also very true. It hits an activated Wandering Funeral, and kind of in Highlander, sometimes you end up playing cards that don't always have targets.
Yeah.
It seems like Tom had all the targets he needed and was able to close this match up.
Yeah, holding up Counter Squall for the rest of the game after he drew it was probably a wise decision anyway, considering Graham was so low on cards. But congratulations, Tom Cliff. I mean, we already know that he makes the top 8, but he will finish round 1 with a win. So congratulations to him. Unfortunately, Graham will go into the submarine bracket of the 0-1s, but not completely impossible to mull his way up to a decent hit from there. Thank you so much for joining us for round 1 of CANCON 2019's National Highlander Championships. My name is Angus Mackay. I've been joined by Philip Nicholson, and we will see you next round.